Goldfish Keeping, August 2021. Gulp. It's the South American catfish that's more like some deep-sea beast from the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Daniel Cohn-Vitterlin spotlights a species with fascinating feeding habits. The Gulper catfish, known to science as Asterophysis bactrachus, is the only species of its genus and was described from Marabitanos, located at the Rio Negro in Brazil. There's no other formal population currently known, and no variant of it that might be described as a second species any time in the near future. Whenever we're dealing with a monotypic genus, we're usually dealing with something special, and the Gulper is no exception. Even Rudolf Nuhr, the ichthyologist who described Asterophysis back in 1858, was fascinated by the fish's most prominent feature, the elongated and voluminous head that he explained as making up a third of the species' length. 2/3 of the head length are occupied by the extremely wide mouth opening, he wrote of it. Asterophysis is a member of the driftwood catfish family, the Alcanipteridae. Going by looks alone, the Gulper catfish resembles some of its cousins in the genus Trachycaustes and Tocantins. But despite these relations, it's a truly original species, quite like no other, and one deserving of a far more detailed inspection. Pricey imports. Asterophysis bactrachus originates from the Rio Orinoco and Rio Negro area in northern South America, inhabiting waters in northern Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela, although almost all individuals in the trade originate from Colombia. They are rarely seen in the hobby, and to my knowledge nobody has had a serious stab at breeding them yet. One reason for their rarity might be their cost, as gulpers are not particularly cheap. A budget of around £75 might get you a specimen some 6 centimetres long, while semi-adults of about 12 to 15 centimetres long can easily set you back double that. Transport is a big factor in this. Shipping large predatory fish is expensive since each individual needs to be shipped separately, and this has become even more expensive lately, thanks to reduced cargo and air transport from the ongoing COVID pandemic. My own experiences with keeping them have revealed lively and interesting fish, but I can only assume that their quirky, some would even say ugly appearance, and possibly even their name, might keep away some otherwise interesting keepers and breeders. Making room. Gulpers are active swimmers, but do not need a big tank in order to acclimatise and settle. The range of movement is limited compared to the fish's size, and they mainly commit to swimming in small circles, checking the immediate surroundings for potential prey. The maximum total length reported for this species is 23 centimetres, and at that point any tank mates under 15 centimetres can and will be considered potential prey. Gulper cats have a highly specialised way of feeding. For one, they approach their prey slowly and casually, unlike high-speed ambush predators. Then they swim around their prospective meal, as if checking it out to see if it will fit. Using their maxillary barbels, they probe the fish from several angles, sometimes moving it, and sometimes moving in tight rings around it. The bemused prey in question rarely tries to swim away, as it doesn't recognise any threat, probably because the gulper is only slightly larger than itself and doesn't appear aggressive. After 10 to 20 seconds of this investigation, the gulper finally positions itself side by side with its prey. Then it suddenly turns its head and at the same time lowers its immense jaw to engulf the fish whole and head first. With its initial lunge, it will usually manage to swallow at least a third of the fish. If some other part of the fish is engulfed first by mistake, say it actually grabs the tail end instead of the head, the gulper will abort mission and release it immediately, because the catfish's feeding strategy is catastrophically compromised. It needs its prey to be oriented head first, as the panicked fish's first response will be to try to escape, and it will do so by pushing itself directly forwards, which means it swims right into the gulper's belly. Rarely you might witness a fish trying to flee the mouth backwards, but even then the gulper has an arsenal of small advantages, namely the many rear-facing teeth that allow it to restrain the struggling fish and keep it where it belongs. Practice makes perfect. The elastic stomach is highly distendable, providing enough room for prey items up to 80% of the gulper's size. This special adaptation requires daily training, something called ballooning. Once a day, the gulper will swallow water to extend its stomach to a size as if it had eaten. In juveniles, the ballooning procedure lasts around 15 minutes. In adults, it can last up to half an hour. When expelling the swallowed water, the gulper also empties its stomach of partially digested food debris. The excrement is white, soft, and often shows up in the form of small balls. The stomach, but also the skin, is kept flexible in this way, and always ready to smoothly extend again whenever it is needed. Receptiveness to food differs drastically between individuals. My first specimen started eating chopped earthworms and freshly collected mussels during the first week, and another one only feeds on fish and earthworms, and a third one exclusively accepts live fish. Editor's note: Daniel is based in Germany, where different legislation exists regarding live feeding to that of the UK. It's worth noting that the gulper's unusual feeding strategy does not work well with living earthworms, though, and it must take a greater effort to keep the worm inside. In the end, the backwards-facing teeth will eventually manage to seize the squirming worm. Gulpers don't differentiate between an intended meal and a larger tank mate that they're supposed to leave alone. Even with relatively large fish, you should not take the risk. With each species I attempted to keep with mine, there was one inevitable outcome. They didn't last longer than a night. Even though they are reported to be nocturnal fish, gulpers quickly adapt to aquarium surroundings and feed during daytime too. The feeding strategy is particularly energy effective. They do not burn energy hunting their prey and do not need to catch numerous small fish. They are more or less in standby mode all day, and often succeed in catching prey on the first try. I wouldn't advise risking even robust fish like plecos, or small to medium-sized predatory catfish, as some keepers suggest. Gulpers will try to mouth a pleco and are capable of swallowing a whole adult Ancistrus, which they would likely get stuck in the mouth or stomach, ultimately killing both. I was told of a similar story from a shop that kept their gulper with a school of bronze catfish, Corydorus anus. It was wrongly assumed that the Corydorus would be kept safe because of their armour. The gulper's common name in German, Altumfresser, Altumieser, a reference to the legend that they can swallow a whole Pterophyllum altum angelfish. Captive care. Once feeding well, gulpers are rather easy to keep and will grow 10 to 15 millimeters a month. Mine like to lurk in the outflow of a filter and have never visited the caves and other hiding places offered. They are always out, either milling about in the open water column or slowly swimming around to patrol their tank. My water temperature shifts from day to night, fluctuating between 27 to 31 degrees Celsius. The pH is around 7.2 and the general hardness is 8H. I do not have any plants in their tank, and doubt they would fare any better with them. They simply do not care about the tank's interior design. While I'm not aware of anybody trying to breed them, the sexes can be differentiated. The posterior rays of the anal fin are fused and form a urinogenital organ in adult males, while the rays are not connected in females. Fertilization then happens internally. Eggs laid by a recently caught specimen have been reported once from Venezuela, but it remains unclear if they hatched successfully. Despite their look and their feeding habits, gulpers aren't aggressive in the traditional way. Yes, they eat everything smaller than themselves, but they are social with their own and can be kept in groups as well. My group comprises of 6 specimens, all of them getting along peacefully with each other, even if they differ in size drastically. The big ones have never tried to get their jaws around any of the small ones. Instead, I often observe interesting intraspecific behavior within the group. They will be swimming side by side, gently touching each other's flank and nudging each other in the anal area. One specimen will open its mouth as if feeding, and yawn in the direction of the other specimen, which will react in the same way. There is no aggression attached, nor anything that indicates a normal feeding procedure, and they are just interacting peacefully. Still, gulpers are largely regarded as unsuitable for the hobby. They're indeed improper fish for the novice or mainstream aquarist, but not for the experienced and motivated catfish fan. I hope this attitude changes soon, and while many other species of driftwood catfish are currently under the aquarist spotlight, this fish should not be forgotten. It's the only member of the whole family that moves around and does not look like a piece of bogwood. Unfortunately, gulpers are promoted on social media as underwater monsters, displayed in videos without any context. They are merely represented as macabre curiosities shown in videos eating goldfish, koi, or large cichlids, all underscored by sensationalistic music. These undeserved portrayals do not show real fish or fascinating characteristics. Nur called this species exquisite as well as unique when he formerly described it. He absolutely nailed it.